Welcome to another Telltale Books video. This is continuing my Homer Eon Flint series, deep dive into as much as I can get my hands on. And in doing my bibliography, I thought Planeteers was his first published story, which it is. I thought that the second one was the sequel to the Planeteers, the Island of Conserve, the King of Conserve, rather. I thought that was his second work. I discovered in May of 1918 he wrote a story titled The Coupling. It was published in the Overland Monthly magazine. That is actually his second published story. Unfortunately, that's one of those that, try as I might, I cannot get my hands on it. So I can't read it, I can't review it, can't do a video about it. So I have to leave that one out of the series. I don't think it's fantasy or science fiction anyway, which is what I would prefer from Homer Eon Flint. So I'm gonna skip over that one. I would read it if I could get it, but I can't get it, so gotta move on. And so I'm moving on to his number 3 then is The King of Conserve Island, which I've already reported on, calling it number 2. It now moves to number 3, and his number 4 story is what I want to talk about tonight, The Lord of Death. We are Telltale Books, bringing you the best in literature, literary topics, and graphic design and bookmaking.
If you want to support us, you can find us on Etsy and Pango, where you can find gently used, rare, and even top quality used books.
And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and maybe even that bell to be notified when new videos go live.
Thanks for joining us.
The Lord of Death was published in All Story Weekly on May 10th, 1919. So he's been publishing for about a year. The story was reprinted in Famous Fantastic Mysteries for December of 1939. And that's kind of where I read it. I got a hold of a Popular Publications facsimile version of that issue of Famous Fantastic Mysteries, which I like. I mean, these are brand new, nice, clean paper. It's not yellowed. They do the best job they can to clean up the pages to keep them readable, although sometimes you get some broken up letters. That's to be understood with what they're doing, working with original issues here. And they do a really good job. The artwork is very nicely reproduced. Lord of Death, I think it's a Frank R. Paul illustration. It's not all that good, but it's in there. And there are other stories in here that have Virgil Finlay illustrations. This issue of Famous Fantastic Mysteries is really, really cool. I like that it's in a lot of Homer Eon Flint's fiction was reprinted by Famous Fantastic Mysteries, and some of it, not so much Lord of Death, but some of the other ones have really, really good illustrations, mostly by Finlay. So they're quality illustrations, and I like it that way. And I like these facsimile reproductions because they're inexpensive, they're in perfect condition, they're brand new condition, although this one got a little mangled in the mail because Amazon just puts them in an envelope, ships them off. So it got bent up, dinged up a little bit in the mail, but it's still good enough. It's still good enough. Getting a hold of an actual copy of this Famous Fantastic Mysteries would be expensive. And getting a hold of the copy of the All Story Weekly would be even more expensive to get it in really nice shape. So to get something in decent condition that I can read without worrying about it falling apart and not pay a whole lot of money is a great thing. So I think this is the best way to read Lord of Death. It is a novella. As I said, it's number 4 overall in Homer Eon Flint's bibliography. It's the first in a series about a character named Dr. Kinney. And there are 4 stories total in this short series. Now, I'm making this video live for the first time on YouTube on Homer Eon Flint's birthday, September 9th. He was born September 9th, 1889. So more than 100 years ago, coming up on 140 years since he was born. And by the way, The Lord of Death is available on Project Gutenberg for free if you want to read it that way. What's it about? It's kind of a story inside of a story. The beginning of the story reminds me a lot of the movie Alien, but it takes place in the solar system. You have this Earth ship with these 4 guys. They go to Mercury, and they're cruising Mercury, and it used to be thought that Mercury always kept one face to the sun, so the sunward side of Mercury would be super hot, like hundreds of degrees, if not thousands of degrees, and the nighttime side of Mercury would be extremely cold, like 200 below zero, and there would be this twilight area around the planet which would have reasonable temperatures. And so science fiction writers tended to set their stories in that zone around Mercury. We now know Mercury does actually rotate, and the whole thing does get baked. But in 1918 we thought it didn't. So the story is hinged on that. The explorers go to that part of Mercury, and they find where there's a city. They find that there's no air on Mercury, but there's this city. So they land, get their spacesuits on, they go out, and they start exploring the city. And most everything is so old, centuries old, that they touch it and it falls to dust. But there's this one iron door that has been sealed shut. They pry it open, they go in, they find these reels. They find a whole bunch of these reels, like tape recordings. And they know they're recordings, and there is a machine there that will play these for them. So they take this all back to their ship. And this has been locked away and preserved for all these years. So for some reason, even though it's centuries old, possibly thousands of years old, it doesn't turn to dust. It has been perfectly preserved. So they take it back to their ship. They listen to these reels. At this point, the story shifts, and it's narrated from the point of the person who recorded these reels. His name is Strokor the Great. And so he narrates the story from this point most of the way to the end. He tells his story of how his world was one where might makes right, the fittest survive. Everything is all about strength and intelligence, and if you haven't got it, too bad, you're going to die. That's all there is to it. You're just going to die, and nobody cares, because you're not strong enough. You're not as strong as the other guy. Well, Strokor, of course, is the strongest of all of them, and he decides he's going to go and defeat the Emperor and take over as Emperor of Mercury. So he does this successfully, and he becomes the Emperor, and he rallies all the troops behind him, and he says, okay, we've got 2/3 of Mercury. This other guy, his name is Clo, he's got 1/3 of Mercury. We're going to go and take the rest of Mercury and unify all of Mercury under Strokor's rule. So he goes after Clo. Even though Clo doesn't make it easy, Strokor is smarter, and so he defeats Clo by using scientific means. And so now Stroker is Emperor of all of Mercury. And he's got this old guy that's kind of advising him. And this old guy, I forget the old guy's name, but this old guy had previously told him to forget about women. But now this old guy says, well, now you've got the entire planet, the entire empire. You need to take a wife and make sure that you have an heir. So he goes after the most beautiful woman on Mercury, and she spurns him because she has another guy that she's in love with. This guy has a spaceship. The two of them get in it, and they head into space. You might be able to see where this is going. They head to Earth, and this is a long, long time ago. Okay, spoilers from here on out. These two are Adam and Eve. So Stroker is pissed off about all this, and he creates this lightning rod that goes deep inside this mountain, and it attracts the charge in the atmosphere, which creates such a huge buildup of energy that it just blows everything up, kills everyone but him. He made sure that he was in a sealed chamber that would not be affected by the electricity. And he sits in his chair, and that's where his story ends. And we switch back to the explorers, the Earth explorers. They go through another sealed door into Stroker's chamber and find him sitting in his chair. He's still there. He's not alive, but he's been preserved. He's kind of covered with this glass. I'm going to tell you the ending. This is interesting. They take him inside of his glass back to their ship. They break the glass open, and that's when he starts melting and then turns to dust, and their air circulation filtration system blows it all out of the ship, and that's the end of Stroker. Definitely pulp adventure. I think there may have been some inspiration from Burroughs' Barsoom here with the idea of going to another planet, but Flint goes farther than what Burroughs did and has the Earth explorers going there by spaceship and finding this civilization that's already gone, turned to dust. Okay, and then starts relating the adventures that happened a long time ago. Flint put a lot of imagination into the story and created his own story. He didn't just imitate Edgar Rice Burroughs. He came up with his own interplanetary adventure, and he thought things through and came up with a very different idea. Like I say, it starts out a lot like the movie Alien, with these explorers going and exploring these things, these ancient technologies that are thousands of years old. And they come across a super alien, but the super alien's dead in this one. Big difference. So kind of like Alien, kind of like Prometheus. I thought it was a very imaginative story and really good on that level. But this is a pulp story. The writing is pretty good. When you get to the section, and this is the bulk of the story, when you get to the section where Stroker is telling his story, the writing feels extremely stiff. And I think Flint was trying to capture the feeling of an alien world, an alien culture, alien mind, and someone who's more barbaric. So the way he talks is kind of simple and kind of like Conan, and yet he's supposed to be the super genius, and I just don't think that works so well. I think that Flint was trying to do this intentionally in order to try to imagine a completely different culture, completely different civilization, completely different types of people. But I don't think he was entirely successful. I think what he did is create a character that feels very stiff, feels very simple, and isn't that great of a character. The Earthmen at the beginning and the end of the story are better written. Not great, but definitely better written than the Stroker part of the story. So, and based on the other stories that Flint has written, he's not he's not John Steinbeck, but I think he's better than most pulp writers at writing character. Most of the 1920s, 1930s pulp writers, their characters are very stiff, very cardboard, very cliche. Flint's are a little better than that. Still not as good as we would like today, but a step above a lot of what came after him. All right, so bear that in mind. I think Flint is a better writer so far than a lot of the others that came after him and wrote science fiction. But he's not a great writer. So this isn't going to get a top tail, but it is a very interesting story, especially for 1919, writing something that is so much like a lot of other 1930s science fiction pulp adventures. He was setting the stage here. Him and Burroughs were the only ones at this time that wrote anything this science fictional. Other people were writing fantastic stories. A. Merritt and Francis Stevens and even Burroughs himself. They were writing a lot more fantasy type stories. Flint was writing real science fiction with super science and aliens and going to other worlds, going into outer space, finding other civilizations. He's doing all this stuff in 1918 and 1919, before there were any, before Amazing Stories existed, before Weird Tales existed. Flint is doing this. So he's definitely blazing the way for what would be done in from 1926 to 1940. Another redeeming feature of this story is this whole idea of portraying this society of absolute might makes right, survival of the fittest, Darwinian attitudes here, applying them to an absolute degree across the whole society on planet Mercury, and showing how the end result of this kind of society, how the end result of this philosophy will lead to someone who is truly more fit than everybody else, and as a result has a much, much bigger ego. One which will not just destroy him, but destroy his whole world. He destroys his whole world and does himself in. His entire civilization is gone, dust, because of his ego specifically, because he was the fittest, he was the strongest, he was the smartest, he was better than everyone else. And so he felt he could do anything without consequence. And there were consequences. I think Flint is making a really, really good point about society, point about attitudes, point about philosophy in this story that goes beyond its pulp structure. So this is better than your average pulp, not a top tail, but better than your average pulp. And if you like pulp fiction, if you like these old science fiction adventure things from the 1930s, The Lord of Death should be on your TBR. It's a good story. And I'm going to continue from here with the rest of the Dr. Kinney series. That's the next 3 coming up in a row. The next one is the Queen of Life, and after that is the Devolutionist, and finally the Emancipatrix. I think that's the correct order. And that's, the Queen of Life is going to be number 5 in my Homer Eon Flint series. So have you read The Lord of Death? Love the title even. If you've read it, I want to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section of the video for everybody to enjoy. Make your comments known, what you think of this story, and I hope you've enjoyed this video enough that you'll come back for the rest of the Homer Eon Flint videos and everything else we do here on Telltale Books. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and ring the bell so you'll know when we post new content, which is for sure Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays every week, and a lot of times on other days. And you'll be seeing me in those videos.